Very nice. Thank you so much for the recording. Very nice pleasure actually to see you some familiar places, familiar faces already again. Andres Roure Cuzzoni saying hi from Johannesburg, South Africa. So good afternoon over here. But I see some colleagues actually joining from Latin America. So good afternoon and good morning actually over there. As Gita was mentioning, the idea of this conversation today, and again, it's going to be a conversation. So I really hope to make it as interactive as possible, is to see how improve the operations and implementation of humanitarian or development programs by using contextual learnings and how to really reflect on those to improve ways of working, efficiency, and overall maximize the impact that our organizations are trying to achieve. I'm representing Strive, which is small startup focusing mostly on knowledge management and organizational learning for international development actors. I've been actually working for Strive for over a year, but before I used to work for different NGOs and UN agencies on peace and stability programs, but with a strong emphasis always on learning. So I will try to drive you a little bit through my experience, a little bit of technical tools as well as methodologies that might guide as well different approaches or methodologies that you can actually take home and start implementing actually on your day-to-day implementation of any specific project or intervention. So very briefly on the agenda for today, I basically organized the presentation in four big blocks. Let's put it that way. So the first one is going to be a little bit on the introduction, on focusing on the today's landscape or contextual, let's put it that way, challenges, and how we can understand those challenges. So the role of contextual analysis and environmental scanning as two tools to really understand contextual challenges. Then I'm going to present how to use these tools to really incorporate these insights and learnings into our operations. How we can make and that's towards the third part of the presentation. So the application of the tools. So how we can implement these learnings into more programmatic or operational learnings. And then I would like to have a more interaction with you, having some comments, but as also Gina mentioned during the introduction, please feel free to make comments, suggestions throughout the presentation. Of course, we're going to have a Q&A towards the end, but please feel free to comment and give your insights as well at any time. So to start with, and to give a little bit of break a little bit the ice exercise, I would like for you to open Menti. You can scan actually the QR code on the screen, or just go to menti.com and enter the code that I'm showing. I will also share the screen with the results. But the idea, since we're going to be talking about context and how to use contextual learnings or analysis into improving operation and programmatic learnings at organizational level, I would like to know from you in one word, how could you describe the global context today? And for that, let me just switch screens. So you can actually see what is coming. I will also do it myself.
Andres, can you share again the link to the Menti?
Yes, it's also at the top of the presentation, Maria. I don't know if you can see
Ah,
it,
sorry,
but
no,
no
my bad.
worries. But the QR code cannot be shown over there. If not, I can wait a little bit and change screens again, huh? Let me just do that.
Perfect.
I see some words coming already. We have 3 responses. Gonna have another minute, and then I'm gonna share. So I don't know if you're able to see the results. I might have to stop sharing this one here. Sorry for that, but I have to keep switching. So yeah, we got a little bit of answers. Thank you for that. Complex, dynamic, diverse, chaotic, technological, innovative, diverse, and full of opportunities. That's a very optimistic one. I don't know if you're actually seeing this screen because you're seeing the results, huh? Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Yes, couldn't agree more, actually. And thank you so much, actually, for just reflecting a little bit together on the context. I agree. We do live in a diverse, complex, dynamic world. And just to put a little bit of sense of that, a little bit on the global landscape, and the reason that I also wanted to start with that, because we're going to be focusing mostly, as I mentioned, on learnings related to the context. So interesting to mention that at present, over 2 million people live or are affected by conflict. Also natural disasters. We have seen what is actually going on in Europe right now the last few days. Only in 2023, there has been over 300 major events worldwide related to natural disasters, also forcing people to be in this place. Over 50 million people actually being forced to be displaced because of this. Economic challenges as well. And social, political, economic challenges. I mean, a growth in nationalism and populism, as you all know, everywhere. It's not only the Latin American trend of being populist, is also happening in other continents, as well as democratic shift and instability. So the idea is how we can actually use specific tools or approaches, methodologies to collect or harness learnings, insights, to understand the context and to use this contextual information to better improve our organizations or even our programs when we're talking about humanitarian and development programs. So for this, I would be briefly introducing 2 key tools. contextual analysis, and environmental scanning, very briefly. And then I will walk you through on how we can use these to be implemented in our day-to-day implementation. So for contextual analysis, is basically a method that is very important or very integrated in humanitarian programs. It is related to the whole do not harm approach, which also is actually in the principles of every humanitarian and development organizations, and making sure that basically our intervention, our activities do not harm. And actually the whole humanitarian world and also some development organizations now are moving towards not only do not harm, but do good, and make sure actually that the populations and the context that we actually do operate, we don't change it, we don't harm it, but we actually can improve it. So contextual analysis is basically a methodology for studying or understanding the synergies between a specific subject and its social, political, economic, environmental, and cultural environment to forecast any specific potential outcomes. So the purpose is basically to predict social, political, or economic shifts and any potential challenges that might affect the context where we actually are operating. Its goal, of course, is to align intervention strategies, and this can be at any level. It can be an activity level, to program level, to a strategy level at a real organization, to really prevail and understand the context. And of course, this enhance the impact of the programs by making them context aware. And what do we mean by that is the whole integration of adaptive management, how we can really actually adapt our programs based on the understanding and on the insights that we do have from understanding the context. An interest user case for the contextual analysis is during the election period in Sudan in 2019. The objective of this specific contextual analysis was done by an international NGO. It was to predict or to understand potential social political changes and the potential, of course, of uprising movements during the electoral period. They implemented this by really understanding and doing a whole analysis at different levels. It can be, this specifically was done at provincial, at also national level to really understand dividers, connectors, the connections between them, and the key actors in the country, but also in the region, to really analyze the political sentiment, the economic indicators, and potential social unrest markers, to really understand how this specific election actually could affect or not the implementation of specific activity. And the result, it was actually predicting the uprising movements, which of course led to a specific better preparation and more effective humanitarian response in specific regions of the country. So this specifically what we are talking about, really using this contextual information to implement and to adapt existing humanitarian but also developing programs, particularly when we are talking about peace and stability programs. The second tool is more general. It is related. It is called environmental scanning, which is mostly and trying to understand. It's a continuous process of collecting, gathering, and analyzing information from the external environment that we actually do implement a specific activity, trying to relate it with our strategic at project or organizational level purposes. The key idea of this or purpose of this environmental scanning is to identify opportunities and threats in our operational environment. And this, of course, is related a lot with media scanning. So to stay up to date with the latest trends, challenges, and changes in the context that we are operating. but also, and super important today, which is the verifying of the information and the media or the sources that we actually use to make informed decisions. So it's a lot related to, and the example that I will give later on is going to be related to media scanning, just to make sure that the information that we actually use is verified, avoiding misinformation that is actually a problem in today's world with a lot of information that has not been verified or checked and might lead, of course, to not really strategic decisions. The user case is focusing on media monitoring and analysis. So this was also an international NGO that did a study trying to capture a broad spectrum of news and articles to analyze a specific global events through a specific time frame. They were focusing on 2022. They gathered over 500,000 articles from different sources about different global events. And the results were like 20% of these sources were actually unreliable or misleading or misinformed, which is also related to the whole importance, as I was mentioning before, of establishing verification protocol to validate the sources and the information actually that we get as individuals, but also as programs or as organizations, to make sure that we are actually acting on evidence-based information and not on incorrect data, if you want to put it in that way. I don't know if at this stage there is any questions or comments related these specific tools or any questions. I cannot see the chat. Maria, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's super interesting. I'm wondering around one thing that I always wonder around. So we all have our understanding of the environment, right? And the ecosystems we're operating in. Do you have like any tips you can give us towards being as objective as possible? Because I always find it's kind of a gray line whenever you try to capture like the diversity, as like some were saying at the beginning, what do you think of the word today? So it's diverse, but how can we make sure, and where do we draw the line in these things?
That's a tricky one, huh? We were
Sorry.
actually we were discussing that actually, believe it or not, in our team meeting this morning, because when we're talking about
Or
the
maybe I was.
sources of information, and I think that is the most important thing for me, particularly when we are actually discussing specific facts and information, and particularly, again, we need to also situate that these kind of tools, context analysis, environmental scanning, of course, can be applicable at any time at any society as well, not only in a conflict or a post-conflict society, but where you have to think that you have in a war zone, or even in an area that actually is affected by conflict, the likeliness, to put it that way, the information to be polarized or biased is very high or extreme, as we also seen with our current events as well all over. Is access to information, and too much information can lead to this polarization. So my recommendation and the best practices is definitely to use different sources, particularly if you're talking about media or you're following a specific conflict, just to follow different kind of media, not only one newspaper from one specific country, but just to have a broad understanding and trying to really understand these dynamics. And that's what we're talking about mostly if we go back a little bit on the contextual analysis. The most important thing over there, and that's the best practice when we talk about political, economic, social, environmental analysis, is looking at actors. What are the key actors? What are the connectors between those actors? What are the dividers between those actors? Really understanding the narratives around them, And then, of course, as an organization, as an individual, be able to make an own opinion and analysis about that and see how our organization will react or not towards this. But it's, when we're talking about reacting, it's not really having an active approach, but it's saying how our interventions, our advocacy efforts, our activities might influence or not the conflict. And that's when we're going again to the do not harm approach, particularly as humanitarian and development actors. We need to make sure that any of our interventions, of our interventions, will actually create more divisions or more harm in a specific conflict. So that will be the key recommendation that I can give. And also, of course, with my come after the after this part of the presentation, is how to use these learnings and this knowledge and how to apply it in your organization. Because you can have the tools, but then you don't really apply it on your day-to-day activities.
I love, Andres, in the case of the Sudan that you were sharing, that you used it to anticipate, because I usually feel like many times we're running behind the wheel, and how you can capture all this information and like in the goal of being more prepared for. Exactly. I love that, not just like responding after.
And that's the thank you for that, because we cannot be, particularly again as development and humanitarian actors, we cannot be responsive. We really need to be prepared, and this kind of information, of course, and making this space as well as organizations or programs to really reflect on the context, how it's changing, how we are operating, is super important, particularly what you're mentioning, Maria, to really prepare to respond to any specific kind of crisis. 100%. Any other question, comments? If not, Father, just reflecting a little bit on what you mentioned, Maria, another mentee, more focusing on your own experience. If you would like to share a specific moment when a contextual learning drastically influence a project or an intervention that you actually were working on, and what was the outcome? How your project or organization or team reacted to this? I will keep it open, and then I will be sharing the results as they come.
Andres, do you think, because I see some people that were connected through their phones, so maybe they could also use the chat if they want to share a contextual learning?
Of course, please. I'm just looking at the chat now. Apologies.
Indira, seguro tú tienes algo. Para los que son latinos, for those that are Latin, Andrés es un colega de Argentina. So, what I mean by
Hola,
this...
Mary. Hola a todos.
Hola.
Encantada. Estoy fascinada porque sabes los temas, que estos temas me apasionan. Estoy
Un placer, Indira, un placer.
poder seguir compartiendo. Y gracias, Andrés. Maravilloso. Me encantan estas estructuraciones y todo el esfuerzo que están haciendo. Bueno, cuenten del lado de nosotros desde aquí de Venezuela con todo el apoyo. ¿Okay? Yo trabajo con adultos
Muchas
mayores.
gracias.
Sí, y bueno, estamos aquí a la orden también. Gracias, Mary.
Gracias, Indira. Abrazo, hermanos venezolanos.
Sí, señor, un abrazo grande y cuídense mucho. Estamos pensando mucho en ustedes, ¿oyeron?
Gracias, gracias.
So, for those that don't speak Spanish, but you should learn, Indira was sharing that she's connecting from Venezuela, and she's been a Catalyst member for a long time now. I really adore her. And she works with what we call now the la economía plateada, so the silver economy. So all those, let's say, most experienced members of our societies and communities, and how they can still be part of the active movement that we have. Back to you, Andres.
Thanks. I love Catalyst.
Thank you. We're just waiting for some answers to come. I don't know.
Sorry, I can't because my internet is very bad.
No worries. The idea here, you can also share it as Indira was also mentioning it. I mean, you can also share it if you cannot access to the Menti, just share a specific experience or any specific learning live with us, not necessarily using technology, taking advantage as well that we are not such a big group. I think we're, yes, 13 participants. So also if you cannot access to, because I see there is not answers coming up, because the idea here is just to also learn from each other, as exactly as our colleagues were mentioning. That's the whole idea of these spaces, just to reflect as well on how we can learn from specific changes or adaptations that you have implemented throughout your programs. But if that is not the case, more than happy to continue. And also looking at the time. And the next part of the presentation is a little bit focusing more on what I was mentioning before, how to translate these learnings into actions, how to really understand the importance of these contextual learnings to improve or to reshape our approaches. That is very well known in the sector for adaptive management. That is how actually humanitarian organizations on paper, on theory, should be actually working. So using this contextual analysis to adapt programs. That is a completely, and I'm just thinking about Ira and Maria about potential conversations as well when we talk about real-time adaptations and also the way that we design programs to make sure that they have the flexibility to be adapted, because that is also a problem that many, particularly local NGOs and national NGOs do face, that sometimes M&E systems, activities are not really flexible to adapt to the context. And that is definitely not a good practice. And particularly donors now are focusing a lot on developing this more flexible funding, flexible planning to make sure that we can actually use these contextual learnings for better resource allocation, more efficient decision making, and actually target interventions and beneficiaries in the right way. Yeah. And last is, of course, connecting the dots. And that's what we're talking about, also the contextual analysis. Contextual analysis can be done at really micro level from the community actually that you are actually implementing a program to very macro. It can be to provincial, subnational, national, regional level to really understand how these all talk to each other, how they actually connected and can influence the implementation of specific programs. So in the terms of the application of the translation of the learnings for better outcomes or on our day-to-day implementation, I divided this part into two. One is focusing a little bit on operational learnings, and the second one on more programmatic learnings, and see how we can use contextual information to be applied into our ways, our day-to-day or ways of working, or even workflows. What I mean by operational learning is an approach of really understanding or drawing these everyday insights or learning into our project task to really redefine, improve the way that we actually do things. So operational learnings is actually our day-to-day learnings that we implement in our program. A user case for this, for operational learning related to contextual data, is in a real use case is, for example, in a project where contextual information was used to address logistical challenges, which is actually an issue, as you know, in humanitarian interventions. So by using this contextual analysis, these analytics, the humanitarian organizations ensure that the resource allocation and early identification of issues improved the efficiency and impact on beneficiaries when we are talking about the delivery of specific goods or health or even shelter. So it's like how, by using these specific contextual learnings, they apply it straight away in a very adaptive and agile real-time way to enhance project efficiency in the moment. And this is and a little bit related as well with what Gira was mentioning at the beginning of the conversation. The idea of this talk is how to become more efficient and more effective. And that is not only related with information that we actually access, but also how our programs and our organizations are equipped to use those learnings to adapt. So it's about the use of the information. And on the second side, which is a little bit more strategic and macro, is the programmatic learnings. So it's like how, as organizations, this methodological approach emphasize how projects between an organization, broader goals, could leverage contextual learnings, contextual insights, trends to improve continuously on their efficiency. And that is more related to procedures, systems, and ways that organizations do capture information. For example, a specific user case for this, a real world application or example is, for example, we are implementing a water conservation initiative, a water project. And by doing this contextual analysis and environmental scanning, we got insights from the local community on the terms of their practices and the area where they were actually thinking of implementing these specific projects. Because of this information, projects were adapted to really fit this unique environmental, cultural, contextual context of the locality or the region where this project actually was being implemented. And of course, the outcome of this is more community engagement and the optimized resource allocation or utilization throughout the project. And a really interesting practice about this is also when I was working for Oxfam a long time ago, it was having community members, so meaning ultimate beneficiaries, which I don't like to use the word beneficiaries, but the ultimate project. Yeah, sorry, I have only the word beneficiary that myself, but it's just the ultimate project people that I don't really know how to say it, beneficiaries, should be doing as well this context analysis. So because that's also the problem when we talk about narratives and knowledge related to my previous knowledge cafe, is like who is doing this context analysis? Because if we have a flight in consultant, in the case of Indira flying to Venezuela, trying to understand the local dynamics and the context, and they make recommendations on how a program should be done, is not really the best practice. So it's also involving community members, community lead on being part of this contextual analysis and how that information also can be used to adapt a project implementation. Huh? And of course, I don't know if there is any question or comments on this already.
There are like some questions on the comment, but do you want to like discuss it now, or like better to like gather it for the Q&A session later?
Up to you guys. We will have a Q&A after, but I'm more than happy also because I'm sorry, I'm not checking the chat. So we actually, I see that Maria mentioned that we're going to have the Q&A, so we can definitely address then some of the questions throughout the Q&A, if that is fine with everyone. Great. We're actually going to be in the Q&A in the next 5 to 8 minutes. The most important thing here is also the nexus between the operational learnings and the programmatic learnings, of course. So what operational learnings are more focusing on immediate actions, day-to-day activities, short-term milestones. Their application is more related as well to more real-time adaptations. And another example can be adjusting, for example, delivery routes in conflict zones after receiving security alerts on how this specific aid should be actually delivered. Programmatic learning is more strategic, is more high level, long term. But their application, of course, make sure that it ensures the more related to the ways of processes, systems. So it can be, for example, how to adapt a specific framework or a big initiative of organization, understanding emerging global trends. So it's much higher level, but both, of course, talk to each other and are correlated. And the good practice is to use the two, and how individuals and projects should be informing programmatic learnings, and how also throughout their day-to-day implementation, they use these operational learnings to adapt and change to a specific context. I don't know if you will still have time for another mentee, which is a little bit on how could you see, but we can discuss this also in person, seeing, I mean, now in the Q&A, and I will actually ask this question again, is more on the key opportunities and challenges that you will see on implementing in your project or organization these specific learnings. So what are the key opportunities and challenges that you will see in capturing and utilizing and using these learnings? So I will leave it for the mentee. I don't know if there is any specific colleague that would like to answer this question, more focusing on how would you see as the key challenges of really capturing and using and applying these learnings.
Alazan, I see you very, very interested in everything, and like there, and I see your face. Would you like to share anything with the group? And now you're smiling. That's a good sign. Regarding how to capture and utilize the learnings.
Yeah, so I'm following. I think I'm getting interested. I'm just following, and then just looking at the challenges that I am facing and how best I can use his whatever he has said with regards to the operational learning, and then with the how to adjust with challenges we are having on the ground. So I'm just thinking through to see the area I can that can fit well.
Amazing. Alazan, do you wanna share where you're connecting from and what is the topic that you're working on?
All right, so I am working on adolescent sexual reproductive health and rights issues, and then gender-based violence. So currently, I have two cases that I am working on. Somebody with 45 years old, and then another person with around 48 who has, defied girls in the community where I am, and now the community, the family members don't want it to be shared. They want to do it home matters. In Africa, the stigma becomes challenging. So, and our organization is trying to connect with other organizations. So far, we have sent the issue to court for them to process the issue. But it seems as if the community want to solve the issue among themselves in the houses. So we are sort of in a dilemma stage. We don't know what to do because they may also target us. And so whilst Andrew was speaking, it's quite challenging and we don't know where to stand. So That's the situation at hand. So if he can also, give his advice, because because we are working directly in the community and we end up becoming the third person, and so currently we don't know what to do, whether to leave the case, because we have already sent the case to the police station. And then, so those are the things that we are battling with. And some have also impregnated the girls, the young girls in the community. But we are still giving our education and then the sensitization in the community. So I don't know how your contextual learning, how we can use it to solve the issues on ground. Thank you.
Al Hassan, thank you so much for sharing this. And there is not one solution to fit all, kind of tool or approach methodology, unfortunately. If not, I do believe that the world would be a much better place and we would not be actually having this kind of discussion. However, and that's what I think these kind of conversations and creating these kind of spaces are so important, because it's also reflecting a little bit on the experience that you have shared, on the case studies or user cases that I also shared during the presentation. This like how we can learn from each other to really try to maximize and improve the impact that we're actually trying to achieve. And very briefly for that, what I would like to introduce is actually what we're trying to do at Strive, which is not definitely the one size fit all solution for learning, but is actually a tool, an application that we're actually testing and piloting with some NGOs currently in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, to support organizations to learn and adapt in a really fast or agile way by starting with learning questions. And that is also one of the most important things, in my opinion, when we reflect about contextual learnings and operational learnings, programmatic learnings, is like, what do we want to know with all this information? And that's a little bit related with the question that you, Maria, also posed on the sources, on how to validate. First of all, as organizations or even individuals, we have to, first of all, say, why do I want to implement this specific program? In your case, this HIV sensitization and also the solution of specific conflicts between community is like, what are you actually trying to solve? And how actually you can improve achieving that specific outcome in a more efficient way. And the first step to do that is actually creating a specific learning question that might test your assumptions, might test the way that you're implementing activities, and then in how we start becoming learning organizations, learning individuals, and using these learnings for future programs. So not really to take much time on Propel, but this is definitely what we're trying to do. Please invited to check, have a look at our website. We're testing the solution, and we also wanted to make this in a really participatory way, in the sense that we wanted to include different stakeholders, different kind of organizations, to validate and support us on designing as well this solution, because it's on the piloting stage. So we're actually trying to develop it together to make sure that does address the needs of the sector, basically. That definitely, again, is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's one potential tool that might help organizations to learn and also to improve and maximize the impact that we're actually trying to achieve together. Huh? So, and on that note, now we do have a little bit of time for questions, comments, reflections, and see, yeah, happy actually to hear more from you on the presentation, on the tools, and actually how to create even more moments like this as community to reflect on how we do things and have to capture actually our own learnings. So I don't know if there is any specific comment or question, just looking at the chat.
Yeah, I think we can go through the chat, Andres, if you want.
Yes.
But when you were mentioning about the working together and developing together, Aisha said in the chat that she can't open the microphone, but she thinks there's a lot of opportunity to share the learnings between organizations, like we always say. And we always have one part of the full picture, and together we can strengthen our perspective and understanding of the system as a whole. And I think that's a very beautiful comment. And before that, Mohammed asked a question about the recent conflict in Palestine, about how to use this contextualization about this conflict. But
I mean, again, same as mentioned for Hassan, of course, there is not one size fits all solution, particularly what is going on with the occupied territory of Palestine at the moment. But it's just, again, and that's definitely my recommendation, is definitely to check as many sources as possible when you're looking at information, when you're looking at the news, as many as possible. And I'm talking at least, particularly with this particular event has a lot of media attention. So you can actually, I think you can check the media of every single country in the world, and you might hear actually some different stories in all of them. So, and as same as organizations, individuals, and institutions, because when we talk about learning, and that's also something super important that we all should keep in mind, learning happens at individual level, at the very micro level. We are the actors of change. Then we work for an organization, for a program, for an intervention that is supporting that cause, and we are actually learning and embedding this learning in practices and systems, but it's individual. So be mindful about how these individual learnings might contribute or not to this do not harm approach in any kind of decision, comment, intervention that you actually make. Because as learning actors that we all are, we should try to lead by example, and particularly when we are talking about conflicts like these ones, misinformation, misunderstanding, we should be cautious on do not causing harm, but actually trying to do as much good as possible, because again, it's aligned to our mission as Catholics 2030 members. That's the only general thing that I can say, because there is not such, I wish I could answer that question in much more detail, but there is not a right or wrong kind of tool. It's more about using the tool as much as possible to really understand the differences and be mindful of those differences. And of course, the cultural, contextual, religious intricacies across any specific topic.
Thank you, Andres, for that reflection. So Alassane wrote in the chat, the challenges and experiences also lead us to better learning, and that he really gets you. And indeed, I think she's very excited about this project. I would like, because we have a few more minutes, to see if Mohammed, Priya, or indeed, if you want to, Kumari, if you want to, Arunima, add something else, maybe something that resonated. And again, in this conversation, there's not right or wrong also. So if something resonated with you, if you want to echo something Andres or anybody else of the participants mentioned, that would be amazing to hear from you.
Got a little bit of a shy audience.
But we always keep moving forward, right? So I'll lead you to talk about the way forward.
So on that, actually is more actually reflecting on the need of creating these kind of spaces as change makers. So I think having these regular conversations, cafe, workshops, brainstorming sessions to discuss what works, what doesn't is crucial. So I definitely encourage to contact us, Maria, Gira from Catalyst 2030, if you would like to bring any specific, learning from your organization related to contextual learning, related to operational, related to programmatic, or even individual that you would like to share and say, hey guys, this actually is something that I realized it worked and I would like to share it with you. And in general, as we all know, we normally see learning as extra, reporting as extra, but it is actually the good practice. It's actually what should be preaching on creating the space, creating the time to discuss, to share, because then is when learning becomes active and alive, and we can talk about it, we can share it, we can apply it. So more than happy to share this with you, to facilitate more sessions and to hear also from members on a little bit on the way forward. And on that note, over to you, Catalytic 2030 family members.
So Mohammed, thank you for your comments. Andres, he's thanking you for the first response. And he also says, I wish if we could learn from the present one and get ready for avoiding the next one. And he also said, ready as Catalyst members to discuss with you anytime from now, and my contact email or WhatsApp if you could be available. He's 75. Hooray! So Indira, I think it's a great match. And also Alassane was talking about working with 48, 49-year-olds. So I think this might be something in common worth exploring. And I wish to contribute positively. So, one of the things we were talking with Andres, Novia, and Gira was around what should we do next? So, of course, the first step for us is always starting the conversation and sharing what Stripe is doing, sharing what you guys are doing, seeing what are the points of contacts. But one of the things that we are also interested in is in you guys helping us understand how would you like to shape the future of learning and impact within Catalyst 2030 members. I know we're all really passionate about what we're doing daily. We are really enhanced and really compromised with our communities, and the level of commitment in the Catalyst 2030 community for me, it's amazing. And that you're here with us sharing, like from India, from Africa, from South America, it's just amazing. But if we were to think what could happen after, we thought of a few things and we're open to new ideas as well. So one would be like to collaborate on best practices. This is something that I'm always keen on because we experience the world in different ways and we view the world from different perspectives. So bringing all that together and finding how to, really do a cool systematization on the best practice and how can we share that? Because we know a lot is context driven, but many of those things can also enlighten the way. We're not talking about prescriptions, A, B, or C. We're talking about, hey, how can we capture the things that worked and share it with the community? Or engage in regular dialogues, such as this conversation we're having today. If you guys would want to present a case, if you guys want to bring some questions, we're open to that. The third option has to do with contributing to a shared repository. So maybe you have been already working on how your organization is learning. Maybe you have found a cool way of capturing these things and you want to share it to the world. Let's start by sharing it with the Catalyst 2030 community that might enlighten a lot more of conversations. The fourth is all of the above. Let's go for everything, all in. And the fifth is, hey, I have a cool idea I want to bring forward to the group. So Indira is now saying, please keep in touch. I would like to know more about. And Indira, we would like to know more about you, because I think that the context in which you're working, the population and the community with which you are working will definitely bring us a lot of insights. So instead of you waiting for our contact, I would love you to bring some Venezuelan vibes into the conversation. How do you feel about that?
Thanks.
Let's see, any comments, any thoughts? We already know Indira, Mohammed are interested in continuing the conversation.
Hi, Mary. Sorry, my English is too bad, and excuse for this, okay? But I like this. Right now in Venezuela, we are working with contact by WhatsApp. It's a new plan for the old people to contact to the different option for how to say bienestar y salud. Sorry, Mary.
Well-being and health.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
No, Indira, si quieres hablar en español lo podemos traducir sin problema.
No hay problema. Gracias. Disculpen mi inglés.
Indira will be speaking in Spanish,
Okay.
and then we'll be translating in English. So hold on. Adelante, Indira.
Gracias. Actualmente nosotros en Venezuela estamos trabajando con todo este tipo de proyectos para tratar de hacer llegar al mayor número de personas lo que es la promoción de la salud y del bienestar, ¿okay? A través de lo que llamamos el arte de cuidar adultos o el arte de cuidarnos, ¿okay? La longevidad, todo lo que estamos viendo actualmente. Me llamó mucho la atención lo que comentó el señor Mohamed, porque eso es algo que hemos venido percibiendo. Fíjate que nuestro proyecto está orientado a WhatsApp y a unos contactos un poco más amigables y más fácil de conectarnos. Entonces, es un proceso de automatización, o un proceso de todo esto, de estos contactos y estos proyectos que me encantan, como lo están manejando Andrés, y que es bien interesante que lo apliquemos, pero también adaptado a las diferentes necesidades y oportunidades de conexión que tienen las personas. Entonces, el tema del WhatsApp, puedo decirlo particularmente, ha sido algo bien interesante y ha sido un potencial y un descubrimiento que nos ha permitido acercarnos mucho más a todas las personas. Entonces, todos este tipos de comunicaciones no solamente sería interesante vía Zoom, sino darles acceso a través de otras aplicaciones, porque creo que son informaciones súper valiosas y bueno, nos van a permitir interconectarnos, no importa la conectividad que tengamos o el nivel o la edad o los conocimientos que tengamos. Gracias, Mary.
Gracias, Indira. So, Indira it was a long text. I'll capture the main things.
Resume.
You can help me too. But she's actually working with longevity. She's working on well-being and wellness also regarding like the health with adults. And she said, Mohammed, she was captured by what you were saying. Indira was also mentioning they're currently working on finding some automations, but also taking into consideration the community's needs and the technology they know how to use. So, for instance, she was saying that WhatsApp has proven to be a really effective way of communicating, because as I understand, what they are trying to do is to leverage how can we take the most advantage of the existing technology,
Mm.
but also making sure that no one's left behind. So really thinking in terms of the context, the culture, the habits that those communities have, and how to reach them better. And I know for a fact Indira always faces connectivity problems, and if she could connect to everything, she would be connecting to everything and participating actively. So I love your invitation, Indira, of also starting to think in terms of accessibility, of connectivity, on how can we think through different lenses to make sure that we're reaching everyone and everybody feels included in what we're doing. And I think that Andres and Novia for this learning group could be really important as well. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. I completely agree. I see Al Hassan, sorry, you got your hands raised. Not to get tired like this. So please go ahead.
Thank you so very much. Yes, thank you, the one who just spoke. We would have loved to see your face as well. Thank you for your commendation. Yes, I am just thinking about the conversation cafe. I think it has been very helpful, and I will commend that we do organize such meetings and have more innovative way of doing that. Having said that, I think we can also plan of having in-person conversation cafe. That will also be good for us to meet ourselves and then meet ourselves and then network well. So in this case, I believe because we are from different countries, we can plan ahead. If Catalysts think that maybe they can take 2 people from Nigeria, and 2 people from Ghana, 2 people from different countries, then we see how best we can give them invitation, and then maybe if the individual can help to maybe pay something like a flight, then maybe Catalysts can also support in some ways. Maybe we can write proposals, or maybe we have some people to support members with that regards. And then I also think that our networking, there is a saying that our network is our net worth. So we have to intensify our networking. We have to even know each other very well, especially when we connect. When we are able to connect. And this is the time that we have to know what individuals we are doing, how best we can co-create together. For instance, I can call Mr. Andre to facilitate a Zoom or webinar for my network members. That is the importance of coming together. So I think we have to find ways and means so that we can get ourselves connected and then co-create together. Also, my last thing is that we can let members also share their challenges on ground, and then how they overcame or how they overcome their challenges. And then also we can share our success stories in our work of implementation. So that we can learn from each other. Thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I guess, yeah, just looking at the time and perhaps a little bit the closing remarks, it's just thank you so much, community members. It's always a pleasure to share. And I really hope it's also towards the end of the year, that is also the moment when we reflect individually as community, as a group, as an organization, on how things actually were done. I think it's a very good momentum to also align and plan a little bit the way forward on what learning should look like in Catalyst 2030 for 2024. So just chasing Maria and Gira on the way forward, and more than happy to keep collaborating together. Thank you so much.
There is also a comment from Aisha Lebro.
Yes, I think Novia is losing connection.
Talking with the team on how we are capturing this. just saying that Aisha Lebron is writing.
Yes, and for the people who share the same feedback with Aisha, like is for sure that you're gonna be hearing from us, like following weeks, following days, because we always want to continue that conversation and have people interested and maybe to see what we can do with those conversations and at the end, how can we make it into an action. So you will be hearing from us, and thank you all for participating. If Andres or Mary, you don't have anything else to say? Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone.
Just appreciation for
Just
all that came.
appreciation, indeed.
Amazing. Well,
I
thank you
also,
everyone.
Lasan, perfect that you're sharing your email. And also, first of all, thank you, Andres and Novia, and thank you participating. Thank you, Hira, also for supporting. And I would like to thank all the participants. And I love that it's such a wonderful space that we all feel confident, and even like Mohammed could ask, like a difficult question or bring out a difficult context that we're looking at. And I really believe this shows the values of the Catalyst 2030 community, as you were saying. We're all humans looking to see how we can improve. And Andres and Novi are trying to see, okay, as we go along, what are those learnings? How can we capture them? How can we treasure them? How can we share them and integrate them into everything we're doing so that we keep on improving time after time? So thank you all. And this conversation will definitely continue. Hope you have a great day. I know it's late in South Africa, so have a good closing of the day. And those in Latin America, have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye, and let's keep in touch. Thank you. Gracias. Merci. Ciao, ciao.